Okay, welcome to Chapter 9. Chapter 7. Setting up local networks. Alright, so we're going to describe network types and internet connections, connect a computer to a wired or wireless network, configure and secure multifunctional router, and troubleshoot network connections. Okay, so different types of networks, and we're probably getting a bit too much into detail here, but a PAN is your personal area network. So let's say if you can't connect to the Wi-Fi on your laptop and you're somewhere and you use tethering on your phone, so a phone and a laptop. A local area network would be like your home or an office. So that's the LAN. A wireless mesh network is across an area where you have like lots of towers, like cell phone towers. A metropolitan area network covers a large campus or city, and a wide area network covers a large geographical area that's made up of small networks. Internet service provider, obviously your ISP provides you with internet. You have DSL, cable, or NBN with your fiber, and hopefully it's FTTP, fiber to the premises, and not fiber to the node, because there's a big difference. Bandwidth. Right, so when we talk about bandwidth, we're talking about the maximum data transmission rate. When we talk about throughput, we're talking about the actual network transmission speed. Right, so theoretical versus actual. Latency is your delay in your network transmission. So gamers are very focused on latency. They want the least amount of latency as possible. And here's a little picture. So here's your network, and you may have a modem router at home, so it's all in one. But this one's displaying a separate router and modem, and you have cables to a couple of devices, and then one using Wi-Fi, and that modem is translating information from the internet to the router. But yeah, they do quite often come all in one. Cable internet uses TV cable lines. All right, so a coax cable, like your Foxtel connection, and the DSL digital subscriber line uses technologies, goes through the copper phone lines. All right, when deciding between cable internet versus DSL, both can sometimes be purchased on a sliding scale, so different levels of use. Cable modem shares cable infrastructure with the neighbours, so it can be slowed down if a lot of others are using it at the same time. DSL uses your phone line, and it must filter phone line static. Back in the old days when we had dial-up, one person would pick up the phone while you're on the internet and you'd lose your connection. So here we go. Here's a picture of the back of a modem, and this is a cable coax connection. Fiber optic, yeah, lovely stuff. So much faster. No line sharing, television, internet data, voice communication, all share the broadband fiber optic cable. You probably find these days that your option for using telephone is voice over IP, VoIP. satellite connections have issues. There's quite a bit of latency, obviously, between the satellite up in the way up there and you down on the ground. It's not ideal for gaming. Dial-up, yeah, I spoke about dial-up. That's old school. Cellular WAN, so a cellular network and made up of cells created by base stations. So it would be your telephone towers. So there's a little picture there. Right. And cellular technologies, you have your GSM, your CDMA, so they're your older stuff. Now you've got your LTE, long-term evolution. So you may see on your phone, if you have a look at your phone, it might say 4G LTE. There's our cellular WAN. Okay, so to use a cellular WAN, you don't just need the software, you need the hardware as well. You need a SIM, which stands for Subscriber Identification Module. Yes, Subscriber Identification Module. So they're tracking you. You know, people worry all the time. Oh, Google's tracking me and Facebook's tracking me and all that sort of thing. Your SIM is tracking you. Okay. So, and you could use a mobile broadband modem, not just a phone with the SIM. You could do cell phone tethering. Use a USB broadband modem and do hotspots. So there's a little picture of a SIM in the back of a old phone. Don't tend to be able to take the back off phones these days and take the battery out. This person here, this is old school tethering using your internet to the laptop, but you could use Bluetooth. And how here is a USB dongle for connecting to the internet, and you insert a SIM in there. Right, so connecting to a wired network, you would be using an RJ45 cable. So your Cat5 cable has a connector, which is a RJ45, and your telephone line has a connector, which is an RJ11. And then, of course, you can connect via Wi-Fi as well. Obviously, your faster speeds you'll get through connecting directly with a cable. To connect, right, if this is the first time that you've been that you have connected to the network, it'll ask you if you want to make this PC discoverable. Click yes for private networks and no for public networks. Okay, just for your privacy. If you're having some issues, you can disable the connection and then re-enable it. Computers use an IP address to find each other on the network. So your IP address is, I live at such and such something street, 123 Candy Lane, wherever it is, that's your address. With computers, the IP address is their home. That's where they live. That's where you contact them. Okay. So IPv4 is 32-bit addressing. So 32 ones and zeros. While IPv6 is 128-bit addressing. So there's 128 ones and zeros in that address. Pretty long. We're not going to get into IPv6 at this sort of level. So we'll keep it simple. IPv4, you've got 32 bits in your string. So to communicate on a network, you'll need your own IP address. And you'll say, well, Ty, that's not 32. No, it's not. But when you write 192 in ones and zeros, you can write that in 8 characters. But I'm not going to get too much into the nitty gritty. You'll learn that in other classes. A subnet mask, you'll need the IP address of your default gateway. So whether that's 192.168.1.1 or 192.168.0.1, it'll be some sort of, by default, some sort of version of that. You can change it. And you'll need the IP address of a DNS, domain name system. Remember, your domain name system is converting the words that you type. Google.com, it's looking up Google.com and it's going, oh, the IP address for Google.com is this. And then it takes you to there. Okay, so it's just a little directory. Now, you will normally get one with your internet service provider, and all your traffic is routed through your internet service provider, and they can see everything that you do. So if you go and download Game of Thrones, they can see that. So if you were then wanting to have a connection through somewhere else, like Google 8.8.8.8 is their DNS, and their backup is 8.8.4.4, or something like Cloudflare, where they protect your data, and I think they're 1.1.1.1. But you're really, if you're looking for alternatives to a DNS, you'll have to look that up yourself. This information, what have we got here? So a DHCP is a dynamic host configuration protocol. Okay, so your computers, when they go onto a network, they say, help me, I need an address, give me an address. And this will go, okay, your address is 192.168.100.4. Okay, they must have an address. To configure a dynamic and static IP address. So the difference between dynamic and static. Firstly, let's start with that. A dynamic IP address is one that changes. Okay, so when that computer connects to the network, they get that IP address, just as I said. When they turn the computer off, the IP address goes back into the pool to be used for another machine. A static IP address is held by one device. So, well, why would I want a static IP address? Well, something like a network printer. You want to know what that address for that printer is all the time, or for a server. Okay, so to change those settings, you need to go into network connections, property. Oh, I'll show you. Go into network connections. So I've typed that in the search bar. Then you go to properties, IPv4, and then you can set these. So you could set your domain name system, or your IP address and subnet mask and default gateway. But they're getting these automatically at the moment. And there's an example. Okay, so do your research before you muck around with that. So you may have a network port on your motherboard. If it didn't come with your motherboard, then you may need to put in a network interface card or something connected via a USB port. Features to be aware of: drivers and NIC users, and also MAC addresses. So every network interface card has a MAC address, which is a physical address rather than IP address. But you'll hear more about that in your networking subjects. All right. Features: unit indicator lights. Yeah, wake on LAN. You can wake up a computer with a certain communication on a network, but you must have it enabled. Quality of service is where you can set up priority, what gets priority on your network for that quality. So a SOHO, a small office or home office network, quite simplistic, easy to set up, and the router manages the traffic between two or more networks. All right, so your router, so let's talk about when you've got a router and modem combo, you've got, it's deciphering all the information that's coming in from the internet. It's then translating that so that your devices can understand it. It has the ports on the back, just like a switch, for your wired connections, and it can also do Wi-Fi. And computers receive their IP addresses. Wireless access point. Yeah, wireless. You could have a firewall to restrict internet access. If your router is using FTP, file transfer protocol, you can connect an external hard drive, and the FTP firmware on the router can be used to share files with network users. So if you want to connect an external hard drive to your router, anyone in the house can then access that hard drive and watch movies. So you've basically got a media server within your router. All right, so when deciding where to place your router, think about physical security. Maybe you want a locked cabinet or something like that. Your default password that's given to you with the router is on the bottom of it. So that's information that you may not want people to getting access to, or hooking up extra devices that you don't want to be there. If you have external antennas, you can raise them and adjust them and make them look pretty. All right, so to set up your router, you would open a browser, enter the IP address of the router, so 192.168.1.1, and then you will go into the menu for your router. Or you'll have to enter the details that are on the bottom. So whether that, the password and username will be like admin or admin password or something incredibly easy. So it's probably worthwhile changing that. Okay, so this is the setup for a Netgear router, and you can see the IP address. Is 192.168.1.1. Right, changes you might want to make: change the router password, configure DHCP, reserve IP addresses. So, do I want a specific IP address for my printer? MAC address filtering, so everything has a MAC address. Your mobile phones have a MAC address, so if there's someone you don't like and you know their MAC address, you can filter out their MAC address. So they try to connect to your network and they can't, they're denied. Bit of fun. Quality of service, which we talked about before. Any plug and play and update your router firmware. All right, wireless standards. All right, so this is under the IEEE 802.11 standards. So we had 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, N, AC, and now X. But you'll find that a lot of, yeah, sure, you can get an AX router. They're not cheap, and most computers aren't ready to use AX yet. Some are, many aren't. So to simplify, I haven't put it in here, but to simplify the confusion that people have had, they've actually renamed, so it's still called AC or N or whatever, but they've renamed them to Wi-Fi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and obviously the latest one, AX Wi-Fi 6. Okay, and there's been changes over the years, and the range has gotten better and different frequencies, and obviously speed gets better, which is great. We love speed. Internet speed. All right, and there's one there. Wireless network adapter. All right, so using a security key, obviously security is important. You can set the security key in the router firmware. And then using a different password. Yeah, passwords for everything. Oh, it's a pain. Develop a password system. Develop a password system. Instead of having all these different random passwords, figure out a way where you go, okay, well, if I was doing something like this, it would be this certain type of words and then a second different phrase, then some numbers or whatever, or some characters, or that's up for you to decide. All right, so security standards, we had WEP, then we had WAP, and that was the bomb, and then WAP2, superseded that, but still it's not very secure. Look, whenever something's built, someone tries to find a way around it, and I can get onto your network quite easily and without your password and kick you off your own network. It's not that hard. It's illegal, but it's not, so if you were to do something like that, you would practice on your own network, because it's not illegal to do it on your own network, but you certainly wouldn't do it on somebody else's. And WPA3 has better features than WPA2. The issue is that when a router says, if you say you're WPA2, I'll use WPA2, then you can get around it. So anyway, they'll figure it out. So your SSID, server set identifier, that is the name of your wireless network. You can always rename it, so it might be Netgear 57 or whatever it is, and you go, well, I don't really want everyone knowing I've got a Netgear router, so perhaps I should change that. And it could be pretty fly for a Wi-Fi, It could be surveillance band 7. That'll freak people out. Call it the Rickest Morty. Whatever you want to call it, it's up to you. It's your network. So long as you know that that's the one that you need to connect to. Okay. So this is just some settings here that you can change. This is from a Linksys router. Quality of service, we already talked about that. For priority, Wi-Fi protected setup generates a SSID and security key using random string. Yeah, WPS is old school. I might remove that. Okay. So Windows includes several utilities you can use to troubleshoot your networking problems. So ping, you'll end up using that a lot. ipconfig to check things out. NSLookup, tracer, net commands, and netstat. So ping. So what we're using ping for is to send a message to ping someone on our network to do a test. So, if you ask a student near you, hey, can you enter ipconfig and find out where your IP address is? I want to try and ping your machine so I can see that everything's working. And then you go through a process of elimination and you'd say, well, should I ping myself? Is everything working on my end? So you would ping home 127.0.0.1. And there's a couple of things there you can try out, like, -T, where you can keep pinging someone until you physically stop it. ipconfig. All right, so you can type in ipconfig in. No, I'm not going to do it on my computer. All right, you can type in ipconfig on your computer and you'll get a limited amount of a certain amount of information. If you type in ipconfig/all, it will give you more detailed information. If you want to release your IP addressing information, you can use release or renew to renew it, or flush your DNS cache. There's a few things there that you can try out. I don't want to make this video too long. People fall asleep. All right, so NSLookup, namespace lookup on name server look allows you to request information from the DNS server. Reverse lookup is when you use NSLookup command to find the host name when you already know the IP address. And here's a little explanation of, we'll try not to go too far over half an hour. Here's a picture of someone using NSLookup, and this is the information that's coming back from that website. All right, tracer or traceroute sends. So when you're having trouble connecting to someone, you can find out where that's dropping off. So if you send a ping out and it's not working out, you can then check all the hops, so to speak, along the way until you get to your destination and find out where that issue is. So let's have a look. Right, so see, we're getting some information here and then requests it being timed out, and so you can use that to measure. So netuse can be used to connect or disconnect a user from a network resource. So if you've got a network drive and you've got somewhere there that you you want to be able to access, or you want someone to be able to access, you can use the netuse command, give the location, the user, right, and then password at the end. And finally, just over half an hour, NetStat lists statistics about the network connection, including IP addresses. Okay, and you can even have that information sent to a text file. You can list programs that are using the connection. You can get a process ID, and then you can task kill that process, just in case one of those programs is actually malware using your network and, you know, key logging everything that you're typing into your computer and sending that off to a remote user. You may want to kill that process. And finally, NetStat lists all statistics about active connections and ports the computer is listening on. And that's all. It's probably a bit more information than what you needed, but have a good day.